Hello and welcome again to Learning Music with Pat. I want to finish something that I started last time and I didn't quite finish it in terms of adjusting instruments to pitch and so forth. I showed you the saxophone, a soprano saxophone, I showed you the clarinet, I showed you the flute. I want to mention just a couple more things about the saxophone and the clarinet. This is a neck piece that comes from one of my alto saxophones. I didn't bring down the whole saxophone, I brought the soprano instead. But this is the neck piece of one of my alto saxophones. And you'll notice the difference in the octave mechanism. That when you play up an octave, you're either using an octave key or an octave mechanism. The words are pretty much interchangeable, except for the clarinet, which is not called the octave key because you don't get a true octave and you have to adjust for that. But if you notice on this instrument here, the octave, when I press the octave key, this little key here bounces up and it brings you up an octave. I showed you that last time. On this regular alto saxophone, on the neck piece of the saxophone, the octave key is on the bottom. Now, some of the older models had it on the bottom. Most of them have it on the top, but some of them have it on the bottom. The other thing that I didn't have a chance to show you, this little circular piece, it's supposed to be a tuning mechanism whereby you can flatten the instrument or sharpen it up depending upon which direction you turn this. So it's a circular device that is made for tuning the instrument, and it was supposed to be accurate. They had a few years when they made them. Unfortunately, they never worked well, so they have stopped making them, but my instrument happens to have it on there. I just wanted to show it to you because the older instruments may have it. They never work, so it's like not useful. The other thing I wanted to mention about the clarinets, they come, usually they look black. They come in hard rubber, in plastics. I understand now you can buy instruments in color. I saw a magazine where they advertised a pink clarinet. I can't imagine playing one like that. And clarinets are in the key of B flat. I saw a magazine where they said you could get them in C. Now I know you can get clarinets in the key of A because I have one, but this is a traditional B flat clarinet. Now, sometimes you have them in wood. Wood is the most expensive, and this is a wooden instrument. It was made in France. It's a very high quality instrument. The way that they make the wooden instruments is that they take blocks of wood about the size and shape of what a clarinet would be, and they soak them many, many, many months in oil. And they soak them until they're so entrenched with oil that the color becomes black like the oil. I once saw a brown wooden clarinet. It was unusual. I've only seen one. It was very attractive. It was very nice. It was wood. You could see the striations of the wood on the instrument, but it was brown. All that means is that it didn't get soaked in oil as long as other clarinets that are black. Most of them you will find in black. Now, if you have a wooden clarinet, it does require special care. You have to oil it every so often. And you wouldn't just take any old oil that you find in your kitchen. You would go to a music store and you would buy specially prepared oil for clarinets. They make a special oil just for them. And you would take the instrument apart. I'm not going to do it now, but you would take the instrument apart and you would take a swab and dip it in that oil and just go inside, all over the inside. Now, some of these keys stay closed and some of them stay open. Whoops, some of them are these two, this is open, but this one here, it stays closed. Now, what I would do with the closed keys, the ones that naturally stay closed, I would take a square of plastic, just cut a square from a regular plastic bag, and then I would open the key and put the plastic square underneath it and then close it again. So when I oil the instrument, the pad doesn't pick up the oil. You really don't want the oil on the pad. So you try to get as many little squares of plastic as you can and slip it underneath to protect the pads from getting the oil. But if it is truly wood, it's an extremely high quality instrument, and you need to oil it every so often. Not a whole lot. Every few months you need to do it. And with the barrels, when you take those off, you can oil it both inside and outside, a little bit outside, mainly inside, and then you get oil being absorbed from both sides. The same for the bell, you can do that. These instruments, I would put a little oil on the back of it where there's not so many keys, and be very careful of the front and mainly oil those from the inside. So this piece of wood that they have soaked in oil for months and months and months, giving it its dark color, then they take and they carve out the bore, which is the tubing, and then they cut out the keys and then make it from there. But you do need to pay special attention to those that are wood. If you're going to be a professional player, playing in symphony orchestras, you'll definitely want to have a wooden instrument. For other things, for playing the way that most people play, even good players, the plastics are good enough. They have a good tone. The wooden ones have a little better tone. Now what I want to get into is how you can tune an instrument, how you can tune up. Now, whenever you play in an orchestra, the first thing they're going to do is say, let's tune up. Let's get instruments in pitch with each other, because there's nothing more annoying for a musician especially, there's nothing more annoying than listening to an orchestra in which the instruments are not in pitch. Some are sharp, some are flat, and you just don't want to have that. It sounds terrible. Now, every orchestra or praise team or band is going to have what's known as a lead instrument. This is the instrument that is the main instrument of the orchestra or band, and it is what you tune to. Now, in a praise team, church orchestras, dance bands, and so forth, it's probably going to be the piano, because you're not going to be able to tune the piano. Some keyboards are tunable. There's a little device in the back, a little knob, and you can adjust the pitch somewhat from that. But pianos are not tunable. They are what they are. So everybody pitches to the piano. If you're in an orchestra, like a symphony orchestra, the lead instrument is probably going to be a violin. Now, the violin has on it a string which is known as the A string. And when that A string is plucked, it has vibrations, 440 vibrations per second. And so when people pitch, they want to pitch to what's called A440. That matches what that violin is doing. And a violin will tune the entire orchestra. And if you go to a concert, you will hear this. The violin will play, and then everybody plays, and they try to pitch their instruments to the violin. And for bands that don't have violins in them, you would pitch usually to the French horn, or sometimes to the clarinets. Whatever instrument is least flexible in tuning is the one that usually gets tuned to, because they usually can't change that much. So you know that's what tuning up is. So how do you tune the woodwinds? Well, with the saxophone, it's the easiest. If you are sharp and you need to be flatter, you simply pull out the mouthpiece, and that extends the length of that tubing by the neck piece, and it flattens the tone. If you are a little flat and you want to sharpen the instrument, and by the way, sharp means to pull it up, flat means to pull it down. If you need to be flatter because you're sharp, you just push that down. Now, that's the extent of what you can tune. The difficulty with the woodwinds is the advantage and the difficulty. It's easy to pitch, but also it's not very flexible. You can only pitch so much. And then when you can't do it anymore, if the instrument is still out of pitch and you can't bring it into pitch, then you have to usually use another instrument, or don't make too much noise, because otherwise it's going to be obvious that you're off pitch, and that is not good. So that's all there is to the saxophone. You have a little bit more flexibility with the clarinet, because with a clarinet, you can always pull the barrel out, as I'm doing now. If you are sharp and you need to be flatter, then just pull out the barrel, and that essentially lengthens the tube, and you can do that. You can pitch it down a little. You can also do the same as with the saxophone and pull the mouthpiece up, and there you've lengthened the tube quite a bit, and that will flatten it quite a bit. The disadvantage, I'll put it back where it was, the disadvantage is going to be when you get it to the point where everything is in, as far as it goes, then usually people will say, I've got it in all the way. In other words, you've put it as far as you can put it, and it's still not in pitch. You can't pitch it any further. You can't tune it any further. It is what it is. Now, I was doing a chapel. I was doing a dedication for a chapel service. I was going to be playing a clarinet solo. My sister was with me. I was going to be playing, she was going to play the organ, and I was going to play the clarinet. And it was like a 2 or 3 hour drive to get there, so I put the instrument in the back seat, and we're driving along. And when I got there and started to play, it was abysmally out of pitch. It was really flat. And I said, either we have three choices. One, I don't play at all. Or two, I transpose every single note, because you can play any key in any instrument, but you may have to transpose it to get it into pitch. I would have had to have transposed a half a step every note I played in that solo. I didn't want to do that, so I kept blowing in the instrument and playing it a little and blowing it, and it raised its pitch to where it was supposed to be. When an instrument warms up, it will sharpen its pitch naturally. And a lot of times, if you have an instrument that's out of pitch, like when I was teaching my students at a fine arts center, which I did for 9 years, they would come in, their instruments they had just brought them in the car with them. By the time they got to the fine arts center, they were out of pitch. So we would try pitching. I would pitch with them every time I taught them, but if they were still a little flat, I didn't worry about it too much, because when you play it, the pitch will rise just as the warm air gets into it. As you're playing it and you're blowing into it, it rises in pitch, and sometimes it can do it significantly. Another way to raise the pitch on some instruments is just to play it louder, because if you put more into it, then sometimes the pitch will raise up. But you're limited in that, because you don't want to blow the place out. You just want to get it so that it's in pitch. Usually warming it up is enough. With the flute, it's easy to take care of. If you are sharp and you want it flat, pull on the head joint and loosen it up that way and pull it out as much as you need, and then you'll get it in pitch. But if you need to have it sharper, you can only put it down as far as it will go, and now you see it's all the way in. It's all the way in, and I cannot sharpen it anymore. So if it's still out of pitch after I've done everything I can to put it back in pitch again, then I may as well just forget it. It's going to stay that way. And but most instruments are pitched to A440. They're made to pitch to A440. Remember, the A string of the violin, pluck it, it vibrates 440 vibrations per second. That's called A440. And so all the instruments are made, most of them, so they automatically pitch to A440. Once in a while you get an instrument that is chronically out of pitch. It's like a half step off or something like that. I've played some saxophones like that, and for some reason they did not pitch it to A440, but that's what it's supposed to be, is A440. And in that case, then you can't do anything about it except to transpose everything up a half a step or whatever you need to get it in pitch, or forget it and just play another instrument. Instruments come in various pitches. This is a B-flat clarinet. Most clarinets come in the key of B-flat, but you can get A concert instruments. I do have one of those, and it looks just exactly the same, but it's a little longer, so it pitches down, and it also has a deeper pitch. I was playing in a concert band It was a college concert band, and I was playing clarinet, and there was a person who was playing beside me who was playing clarinet. And he was kind of proud, somewhat arrogant, and he had a solo to play within a song. We were all playing the song, and a part of it was a solo, and he was playing a clarinet solo. He had both a B-flat clarinet and an A clarinet, and they look exactly alike, except one's a little longer than the other. And he was at me all the time, pitch with me, tune up with me. We've got to be exactly in pitch. I'm playing the solo. You've got to be in pitch with me. And he really got to be obnoxious with it and quite arrogant with it. And the band was getting a little angry at him for it, but they didn't say anything. So he had both. He had a clarinet. You can buy stands to put instruments on, so when you're not playing them, you can just put them down on a stand. Well, he had a stand, and he had a B-flat clarinet, and he had the A clarinet, which is a half a step deeper, a half a step off from the B-flat. It's supposed to be that way. So when it came to his solo, he picked up the wrong clarinet. The clarinet solo was supposed to be played on a B-flat clarinet, which is what most people play. He took and picked up his A clarinet, and he was a half a step off every single note. Now, had it been me, I just would have put the instrument down and picked up the other one. Everybody would have known what you were doing and why you were doing it. It wouldn't have been any big deal. But he played that whole solo, which was quite a few measures long, in the wrong pitch. And it sounded horrible. To anyone who was not familiar with music, they would have said, well, why is he so off? It doesn't sound right. And it sounded awful. But he continued, and I thought to myself, why doesn't he just put it down and pick up the right instrument? But he didn't do it. He got started on that instrument, and he was going to finish on that instrument. Well, he was terribly embarrassed about it, and I had to sympathize with him. It's a simple enough mistake to make because you have two instruments that look exactly alike, but one's in a different pitch than the other. You want to make sure you pick up the right one. But the band kind of got a big chuckle out of it. Finally, he was so arrogant, you know the Bible verse, pride goes before a fall. And he could have rectified it very simply, but he didn't. So everybody got kind of a laugh about it. Now, what about these other instruments? How do you tune? How do you pitch? Some of the smaller instruments are pitchable, are tunable. This is a sassoto flute, and it's a two-piece. I can lift up the top, and I can pitch it that way. Now, you're limited. There's only so much tuning you can do on a woodwind. The recorders are also a little bit tunable because you can take the head joint and you can move it and lift it up a little. Okay? Sometimes you can do it with the foot joint and pull that out. So you can pitch it a little bit. With the woodwinds, it's basically you pull it in, you pull it out, and that's it. But there are some instruments that are not tunable. The little penny whistles are not tunable. Now, the companies to make them, and all of these here are British made, the companies that make them always make them in pitch to A440. They have to be in pitch A440 to match what everybody else is doing because, as I said, they're not tunable. So they have to make them in the right pitch for the key that they are in. And most of them do that. So this is in the key of D, and it's going to play perfectly in the key of D because it's already been pitched in the factory to A440. But if it's off pitch, supposing I want to play, this is in the key of D, so it's perfect for the key of D. Supposing I want to play in the key of C, I can't do it probably with this one because it's pitched for that one key, and that's what it's going to play. So if I want to play in the key of C, I'm going to have to get another penny whistle, which has already been, keyed to the right key. You wonder why we have so many instruments. I was in an orchestra, it was a church orchestra, and I was playing clarinet, and one of my friends was playing flute, and she was sitting beside me. She came in with her flute to a rehearsal, and she had a little penny whistle. And she says, Pat, you got to get one of these. They're fabulously easy to play, they're a lot of fun, and they don't cost very much. So the next day I went out and I bought one, and she was right. It was very easy to play, didn't cost much, and it was just a blast to play. This one is in the key of E flat. It'll only play in the key of E flat. I have one in the key of A flat that will play A flat or E flat. Most of the time when you get these little non-tunable instruments, and if you're ordering them, it'll tell you in the catalog whether they will be in tune or whether they're tunable or not. They'll advertise this one's tunable. You know, if it doesn't say so, it's probably not tunable. So if I want to play in different instruments, I have to get an instrument that is keyed for the key that I want to play in. So what I tried to do is I try to get a set of instruments where I have the smaller instruments, one of them for every key that I will play. Then if I'm playing in one key and I have to switch to another key, I just grab another instrument. This is in the key of F. It's so small that it is very high-pitched. See, with the octaves, it's so easy to get an octave. You use the register keys and the octave keys in these main instruments. These you just blow harder. It's just real simple to do. So I started getting a collection of these various small instruments, so I would have one in every key that I would be playing. And I have quite a few. And the same with the conical penny whistles. They come to a point. You can get them in different keys. The same with the recorders. This does happen to be a penny whistle, much larger, but it is a penny whistle. And it is tunable. This little mouthpiece, you can pull it out, you can push it in. So I developed a whole bunch of instruments so that I could play in any key I wanted to and just switch off the instrument. If it's not tunable and I can't play it in except one key, I just get a bunch of them. And that's the way I did it. And I have a bunch. And then I started getting sets of instruments. Instead of carrying my instruments everywhere, why not get a set of instruments like I can keep at the church, another set of instruments that I can keep in my apartment, so if I travel, I take them with me. So I had 2 or 3 sets, and when we play in nursing homes, I have another little set of instruments that I can bring to the nursing home. It means that I don't have to be carrying instruments everywhere all the time. Like this morning, I had 4 bags full of instruments, and I didn't even bring all that I wanted. So this gives you an idea of tuning and pitching and octaves, and next time I'm going to go more into octaves and scales and what they are. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and please join me next time.